Hello, I'm Paul Bellany and I run the writers' room at Faircroft House in Saffron Walden. Today I'm delighted to say we are having a very special guest. I'll be having a conversation with the children's author S Landor, whose new book, The Mirror of Pharos, was launched recently. The novel is full of magic and adventure, and fans of the Harry Potter series of books will love it. So without further ado, let's go and meet the lady herself. When did you start writing stories?
I think I was probably a storyteller even before I began writing, because as a kid I was always in the land of make-believe. You're probably all the same. I must say it's a delight to meet some young writers from Saffron Walden, and this is a fab place. I wish I'd had something similar when I was young, because I think it's nice to have your own tribe and support, because writing's quite a solitary business. Always as a kid playing make-believe, building dens, giving trees names, forcing my friends to play parts in stories that involve witches and dragons, and everyone would run off screaming. So I think writing begins as a mindset from the very beginning, and you're seeing stories in everything. It's what you notice, it's how you are. So you need to be observant, you need to be noticing things all the time, and I think as we were saying, with social media and phones, there's that constant, it's like an addiction almost. I mean, I've got it now because I'm having to do all the social media, surrounding the launch of the book, and you don't give yourself the headspace to be creative. So that's why a project like this is absolutely brilliant.
And did you always want to be an author when you were sort of young? Or?
I wanted to be a storyteller. One of our school trips was to an Indian reservation. And to our surprise, we met a real-life Indian chief, full headdress. He taught us how to get maple syrup from trees, he taught us how to make fires, and then he sat us around the totem pole, and we had a powwow. I can still picture it. And then he told us a story, and it was about all the animals and the faces on the totem pole. And I was just transfixed. Well, we all were. And afterwards, I just went and stood beside him. It was like hero worship, looking up at him. And there was this big wrinkled face. And he eventually looked down at me, and he could see me staring, and he kind of took my chin and he said, "Little wolf." And so he gave me like an animal totem name, which for a 7-year-old was like, oh, wow. So that's where the passion for wolves came from, and it stayed in my mind. I read everything to do with wolves from there on in. But also, I was just so amazed by this guy who could stand up and tell a story and have an audience, in the palm of his hand. And I thought, I'd love to be able to do that. But coming out of university, yes, I could write. I'd edited magazines and things, but it wasn't a job you went into then. I think it's perhaps, more acceptable now. So I was always reading as I grew up, and English was my favourite subject at school. I loved all the analysis of the literature, and I basically thought that was the only thing I was any good at. I think it's when you love something, you just sort of follow that path. Yeah, went to a good university, King's College in London. I had loved the course. It was very, very challenging. In those days, there was no assessment you had to do. Your finals were all in 1 week, so back-to-back exams about literature from medieval times right through to 20th century. I think if you're a story writer or writer of any sort, you've got to read and immerse yourself in literature. So it was a great way in.
Do you immerse yourself in similar books, or do you avoid anything similar for worrying about kind of being, sort of subconsciously putting stuff in?
Yeah, I do. Yeah. I do. I actually, for quite a long while, stopped reading children's books because I didn't want to be too influenced by anything, similar. Although all writers are magpies. I mean, if you're reading, they say there are 7 stories, don't they? I mean, I think it boils down to one story in the end. It's, a character on a quest to find out who they are and what their purpose is.
What is your favourite book, or the books?
The book, I brought it with me. The one that was my childhood favourite was this one, Tom's Midnight Garden by Philippa Pearce, who actually lived quite close to here in Great Shelford.
Oh, wow.
it was my first introduction to a time slip novel, and of course that's what my book is. I love to write cinematically and sort of swoop in, pan in, like the filming.
Yeah, well, you could see that in the book.
Be close to your character, and then step back.
Because in the first person you're slightly restricted, aren't
yes.
you? You can only really go with what they can see. So.
Yes, and there's that relentless me, which you have to be in the first person, but it's quite difficult as a writer to. Yeah.
Tell us something about the way you researched for your book.
I went to the UK Wolf Conservation Trust in Berkshire. Now you can all go there; it's a fantastic place. And I went walking with a wolf because I wanted to know what is it like to actually get up close and personal with a wolf, because that's happens in my book. There was a certain way of approaching him. You had to stand beside him, show him your fist so he could smell, get your scent. And then I was allowed to stroke him, not on his head or his back, had to be on his side. And at one moment when he just turned round and he put his nose up really quickly so that he was almost nose to nose with me. And his handler said, "Don't worry, he just wants to know what you had for breakfast." But it was, for me, as somebody who's really passionate about wolves, that was amazing. Somebody gets trapped in a car with a car crusher coming towards them, and I thought, okay, I need to find out how a car crusher works. So I went to a local breaker's yard near here at Triplow, and they let me operate the car crusher, and so I actually did things that would give me the sense of what the feeling was like whilst all that was going on. And I went to a lighthouse, because there's a lighthouse at the centre of the story.
Yeah.
I've had my book edited and redrafted 3 or 4 times.
Yeah. So tell us a bit about the process of all that.
I suppose I write more by process of discovery, and so I put the character in interesting situations and then get to that point.
I guess that's much more exciting to do it that way, isn't it?
It is, and I also think it just, you're living through the emotions.
So you get more natural responses.
Yeah. So, but I've done a lot of probably groundwork before I even start writing. So I know my characters, how they speak. I can hear the voices going on in my, my head. They have distinctive voices. I know their backstory. So, for instance, Jack in the story, he's lost his parents in a mysterious diving accident. He's been bullied at school. He's on report for not doing homework. So, he's also given up all the things that he loves. So he's in a state where he's slightly fearful and doesn't want to step outside his comfort zone. So I knew all that before. And
because you've got plenty of really sort of colourful characters in the book, and are they just completely made up, or do you think, that's a bit like so and so, or you sort of meld different people that you know together, or
I think
just
we
complete
also
inventions?
Notice character traits in people, don't we? And I do keep a notebook with me all the time.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know if you guys do, but if you're constantly jotting down things you notice, so I've got piles of notebooks.
Yeah.
So I listen to the way people talk. There's a character in the book. He speaks a little bit like my granddad used to. This is now then, this is now then a lot. And there's a girl character who's kind of feisty and very straight talking. So she's quite a good foil for Jack, who's a bit more introverted.
Yeah.
And Charlie says, amazing.
Most writers will have somebody that they have as a soundboard.
Yes.
So you say, okay, and maybe you could speak a little bit about that.
Well, I have friends who are writers, and I've been part of writing groups, so people who are quite qualified to be editing. I did for a while go through the traditional publishing process, so I had a literary agent. I had 18 months with her editing before it went out on submission. It's been proofread, it's been line edited, so I think you need your supportive writing group around you, and you need to workshop, and you need people who are going to be really honest. I'm self-editing as I go along, which is not always a good thing, because they do say, just get it down, let it flow. But it does help me, because I am always searching for the right word, or a word that maybe inspires an emotion that then fires you along. It's like rocket fuel. If you get the right word, gives you the emotion, or the right way, you know, of the dialogue that someone's saying.
Yeah.
So yeah, the choice of words is part of the process for me.
And like you sort of talked about it being sort of cinematic, I mean, do you sort of think that the possibility it'd become on like a TV film or a film at the cinema? Because it certainly lends itself.
It does. I think I need to write books 2 and 3 to go with it.
Yeah.
People have watched it in the business and have enjoyed it and said, maybe not a one-off film, but the way things are going at the moment, it's more like a Netflix type series. But in order to do that, I need more material. I mean, it's a biggish book, but I'd like to write book 2 and 3 before I do that.
What's the best piece of advice you've been given as a writer?
I think probably from my tutor on the MA, Julia Green, who's a children's author, and it was about the process, and she said, trust the process. So it's that process of discovery. It can be so scary when you're setting out on any project, but yeah, take those steps, get words down on the paper. We all, I think, as writers, are full of self-doubt, and have those days when, you know, you feel like you're drawing teeth and you're actually not a writer at all, and maybe you want to go and get a job in a supermarket or something like that.
Yeah.
And I've had many times like I haven't, you know, come close to giving up.
Yeah.
But I mean, if you've got a good story, it won't let you go. So, you know, if you're going to write, you're going to have some really, you know, tough times. Just keep believing and trust the process, and write from your heart as well, because
Absolutely.
You know, we're all so individual. They say there are only 7 stories, but actually there are millions of stories, because we all tell them in different ways, and we each have our own personal voice. So, you know, don't be frightened to put, you know, bare your soul, really.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, and I mean, people talk a lot about writer's block and all that kind of thing, and I mean, people have different points of view about it. I mean, for myself, I kind of don't think it exists, because I think that it's just that you need more time.
I agree.
Yeah, to sort of to generate ideas, and it's, especially in the busy lives that we have, is finding the time, just quiet time to yourself, whether it's walking a dog or having a long bath, or, you know, whatever it is, sitting in the garden and just having nothing to do.
Yeah.
And it's a bit like, and that takes you back to when you're a child and you're sitting in your bedroom, lying in your bed, bored out your brains, and then, you know, 20 minutes later you find yourself drifting off, thinking about, you know, whatever it is that sort of takes your fancy in your imagination.
Yes. Well, I go out and I'll go and sit in my tree house and do a bit of free flow writing that's anything, or I'll garden. Or sometimes, this is going to sound strange, I mean, I think our minds carry on when we're sleeping. So if I'm really stuck in a bit of plot, or, I don't know, something's not coming, I'll ask the question before I go to sleep. Okay, so why is Jack feeling like that?
Yeah.
And amazingly, you know, it's not always there first thing in the morning, but it comes very soon after. In
the morning, when you've woken up, if you've not got to rush off, if it's a Saturday or weekend or whatever, or if you're just about going to bed, they call it the alpha time, and it means that you're tired, and so a lot of your brain shuts down, and your subconscious and your imagination is at the forefront, and that's when it's a good time to be asking those questions of yourself. You sort of drift off, not thinking about it, then all of a sudden, bing! It pops in your head.
It's one of the reasons I call the wolf alpha.
Yeah.
It's because it will unravel in following books, but it's an alpha state of mind.
Right, yeah, fantastic.
And of course, he's all bound up with time, time present, time past, time future, the moment, being in the moment and being mindful.
Yeah.
So absolutely.
Brilliant. And I can't let you go without asking you why the cat was called Odin. I think that's fantastic.
Odin. He's named after a Norse storm god. Yeah. And there's a storm that happens at the beginning of the book, and you know, they say raining cats and dogs, and so
I love all that explanation. It was fantastic.
All those associations were playing in my head. Was that he was like a storm cat, I suppose.
When you're writing a book, I mean, how often do you actually read out loud to yourself the story?
All the time.
Yeah.
All the time. Yeah, I think you have to, from beginning to end.
Because when you hear it, you know,
completely
it's completely different from what you see on the page, isn't it? Yeah.
Yes.
Right, well, I think round of applause for Jenny.